It could take something as small as a toothpick to just, and we bust. And that's what happens to a lot of people. Hello, Inspe family. I am Dr. Ndaba and I am back with another episode of the Inspe Words podcast. And today we are talking about dealing with it. Maybe let me start here. I believe that all of us as human beings, at our core, we have an idea in our minds of how we want our futures to be like. I believe that we all have a mental picture of how we want our lives to be like. You could call that a dream, you could call that a vision, but it is at its heart a mental picture of how we want our futures to be like. And I believe that we don't only dream about these things, we don't only have these ideas in our minds, but many of us work really hard to try and make that idea a reality that we live in, to try and bring that dream into the reality. That is very much important, that we actually work hard to get to that dream, because, as I like to say, a dream quickly becomes a nightmare if the dreamer does nothing to make it a reality. Those ideas that you have, that mental picture, will not magically become your reality, but we've got to do the work that it takes to make that dream a reality. But I'm sure you can agree with me that as much as many of us work hard to try and get to the realization of that dream, not all of us get there. And that's the sad part. There are so many things that stand in the way of us getting to the realization of the dream. But one of the major forces that is holding so many of us from being able to make that idea we have in our minds a reality, it's not things that are outside of us, but it is our experiences of the past. Maybe let me rephrase that. It is our holding on to the things that happened in the past. It is holding on to the pain that comes from our experiences from the past. And this could be things that we did in the past that continue to haunt us today, or it could be things that were done to us in the past that continue to haunt us today, whose scars we still see, whose wounds we still experience, that still bleed even to this day. And that is why I have titled today's episode, Deal with It. I talk about this in the Jumpstart Effect. I share my story of being stuck in the past. And I want to just read a short excerpt from the book that actually speaks to that. It's on page 76 of the book. If you have the book, it's a chapter titled Stuck in the Past. It's chapter 3 of the book. It says, "The good book says we should not let the sun set upon our anger. But in my case, it set more than 5,000 times over 14 years. 14 years. Can you imagine 14 years of concealed cancerous anger and pain? 14 years. It was not until God forgave me for my lack of forgiveness that I learned to forgive. The experience of forgiveness surpasses all the lectures that one can get about forgiveness. When I was in grade 9, February 2007, I accepted the Lord Jesus Christ into my life. It was then that I learned to forgive. I forgave my uncle who had died by then. I forgave my father, but I had not dealt with the effects of the anger and pain that his absence had caused me." Let me repeat that again. I forgave my uncle who had died by then. I forgave my father, but I had not dealt with the effects of the anger and pain that his absence had caused me. In the Christian community, I found men that I looked up to, men who were different from the ones I had known from my childhood. They were happily married, loving and caring for their wives and kids. More importantly, they did not drink. Pastor Simon Mazibuko of what is now the Christ Apostolic Church is one of those men from whom I learned a lot about life by just looking at his conduct and ministry. Looking at these men changed my perspective of men and manhood, but it never helped me deal with my pain. I had forgiven my uncle and father, but I was still stuck in the past. I was not entirely free because of the anger and emotional pain I had bottled inside of me. I kept it in my heart for such a long time that it felt like a part of who I am. I had become oblivious to its toxic effects on my self-esteem, confidence, and my relationships with others. So I'll stop there. If you want to get more of this story, you've got to read the book for yourself. Many of us are stuck in the past because we do not confront the experiences from the past. It took me such a long time to deal with the anger that I had bottled inside of me. And I like to say that you cannot conquer, you can never conquer what you will not confront. You can't, even if you want to, you cannot conquer what you will not confront. And some of us try to deal with these things by just avoiding them and pretending like they never happened and pretending like it doesn't hurt. But the tricky thing is, there is no eraser for memory. Those things that you are suppressing inside of you, there are often times where you see something that will trigger the memory of what happened in the past. And there's no eraser for memory. So maybe even now, as I'm talking to you about past experiences that continue to haunt people today, some of those memories of what happened to you are popping up in your head because there is no eraser for memory. Until you confront those experiences from your past, until you confront that pain, you will forever try to avoid certain things because there is no eraser for memory. Memories have a funny tendency of attaching themselves to things. If there was a song that was playing when that painful experience happened to you, I bet you will not play that song because if you have not dealt with it, it will continue to remind you, it will bring flashbacks of what happened in the past, and that will continue to haunt you just because you have refused to deal with it. And you'd be amazed the amount of pain, the amount of bitterness, the amount of grudges that are buried in people's hearts. And they're walking as if nothing happened. But you will not conquer what you will not confront. The pain of yesterday that is haunting you today will haunt you even tomorrow if you don't do anything to deal with it. Let me put that differently. The pain of yesterday is haunting you today, and if you don't confront it today, it will continue to haunt you into the future. That is why I want to say, deal with it. It could be the father who left you. It could be the uncle who hurt you. It could be somebody who rejected you. It could be a past experience of failure. It could be something traumatic that happened to you. If you don't deal with that pain, it will haunt you even tomorrow. That is why certain people end up getting to points where they have mental breakdowns, they suffer from severe depression because they don't deal with things that happened to them in the past. And of course, there are so many contributing factors to these mental health disorders or these mental health conditions. But if we don't deal with things that are painful, that are traumatic, that are hurting us from our past, we are setting ourselves up for failure. And I like to explain this with what I call the balloon metaphor. I have a balloon here and I want to demonstrate that to you. So think about this balloon as yourself, and something happens that is painful in your life. Somebody rejects you, and it's like you are blowing air into the balloon. And because you don't deal with that pain, you are blocking the air from coming out of the balloon. And something else happens. You get rejected for a job. You get rejected by somebody you're asking out, and it blows air into your balloon. Something else happens. Somebody says something that rubs you the wrong way, and you're blowing air into your balloon. And you happen to have a traumatic experience. I don't want to talk about what those kinds of experiences could be, but you know what happened to you. You know those kinds of things that hurt people, that are traumatic. And you're blowing air into the balloon. And because you don't deal with it, the balloon keeps growing. Something else happens. You blow air into your balloon. Something else happens. You blow air into your balloon. And you keep all this air inside of you. That is what often people refer to as bottling things inside. You keep all of these things inside of you. You don't deal with them. You seal them, and you try by all means to suppress those things, those memories, those feelings about what happened in the past. But because we are human beings, there comes a time where you can't take it anymore. All of these things that are bottled inside have stressed you so much that your defense mechanisms end up failing. And I'm sure if we keep on pumping the air inside, you can already imagine what is going to happen. And for most of us, it doesn't take something big to happen for us to break down into depression. It doesn't take something big to happen for us to fall into mental breakdowns. It could take something as small as a toothpick to just, and we bust. And that's what happens to a lot of people because they don't deal with the things that hurt them. They don't deal with the things that are painful. They avoid doing the work of healing. These things pile up and they bust. They break down into depression. They have mental breakdowns. And some of them, they take this out on their loved ones. They take it out on their children because they need to offload. They need to take it out on something because their defense mechanisms cannot take it anymore. And you don't want this to happen to you because when you bust, it's very hard to put back the pieces. The pain of yesterday is haunting you today. And if you don't deal with it today, it will continue to haunt you into the future. From this book, The Jumpstart Effect, I want to give you a few things, a few keys that will help you to deal with it. Whatever it is for you, I want to give you a few keys that will help you deal with it. 5 keys that will help you deal with the pain from the past. Key number 1 is awareness. I like to encourage people not to live like robots. Be aware of what is happening. Take time to study yourself and understand what's happening inside of you. Understand why you're feeling the way you are feeling. Why do you behave the way you behave? Because in those things, you can be able to trace back the root of the kind of behavior you're exhibiting. But we can't do that if we don't take time to reflect. We can't do that if you don't take time to introspect. and ask ourselves very hard questions. Why am I having these negative thoughts? Why am I thinking the way I am thinking? Why am I feeling the way I am feeling? And why am I behaving the way I am behaving? Because you cannot deal with a pain from the past that you are not aware of. So the first key is to develop and cultivate awareness, then understanding of what is happening inside of you. So that's key number one. Key number two is acceptance. Acceptance. This is not justifying what happened to you in the past, but it is accepting that it actually happened. It is accepting that it actually caused you pain. It is accepting that it hurt you. And the fact that it still hurts, even if it's 10 years later, 5 years later, 3 months later, if it still hurts, you've got to accept and acknowledge that it still hurts. And the fact that it actually happened, because you cannot deal with something you deny. So acceptance is dealing with the aspect of denial, those people that pretend like it didn't happen, because then it is out of that acceptance that you will begin to do the work of healing. You cannot heal from something you deny. Key number three is responsibility. It is not your fault that you were hurt. It is not your fault that something bad was done to you. It is not your fault that you were rejected. It is not your fault that your father left you. It is not your fault that you were heartbroken. And maybe sometimes it is. But in most cases, these traumatic experiences are not our fault. As much as it is not your fault that you were hurt, it is your responsibility to do whatever it takes to heal. There are people that would say, hey, I will never forgive them. And saying, I'll never forgive them, is not hurting the person you refuse to forgive. It is imprisoning you. It is keeping you stuck in the past, because whenever something that triggers that memory of that experience, your whole day is ruined, your whole week is ruined, your whole month is ruined, because you just refuse to forgive. So it is not your fault that you were hurt, but you sure have the responsibility to do the work it takes to heal. Because only you can do that work it takes to heal. And that requires that we extend the same kind of compassion that we often extend to other people who are in distress, and extend that kind of compassion to ourselves. And by this, I do not mean that you fall into this dark place of self-pity and feeling sorry for yourself. There is a difference. Compassion is not feeling sorry for the person who is in pain or is suffering. It is being moved to do something to ease their suffering, or maybe even to end their suffering. So if we can extend the same kind of compassion that we often are more than willing to extend to other people who are suffering, and extend that same kind of compassion that would not let us rest until we do something to get us healed, it also requires that we exercise self-love. You've got to love yourself enough to heal. It may not be your fault that you were hurt, but it is your responsibility to do the work it takes to heal. And key number 4 is understanding that dealing with it is painful. Dealing with it is hard. It is difficult, but difficult does not mean impossible. I want to say that again. Dealing with the wounds from the past is painful. It is hard. It is difficult work, but difficult does not mean impossible. And one of the things that actually make it so difficult to deal with the pain from the past is that it is more like cleaning a septic wound. And if you have ever been injured, you can already know and imagine how much pain it is when they put alcohol on that open wound so that it does not continue to gain infections, so that the wound can actually heal. It is painful. But that's a different kind of pain. It is a good kind of pain because it is the pain that leads to healing. It's not the same pain as the one they caused you in the past. It is the kind of pain that leads to healing. So, I want to say difficult and painful does not mean impossible. Key number 5 is the fact that this healing journey does not have to be lonely. It does not have to be a lonely journey. There are so many of us that have this idea or this belief that they can only deal with things by themselves. Whenever they are suffering or whenever they are in a season where these pains from the past are triggered, these memories of what happened to them in the past are brought back to them. They withdraw from their community and they isolate themselves. And the problem with that is that we keep replaying what happened. And sometimes we even put spices to it that will make us refuse to forgive the person that caused us that pain. We add things that had nothing to do with those past experiences. And I love to say this. I love to say that we give power to our experiences by the meaning that we attach to them. And sometimes these things continue to hurt us so much because of the meanings we have attached to those experiences. And sometimes those experiences have absolutely nothing to do with the meanings that we have attached to them, but we continue to get hurt because of that, because of the meanings that we attach to them. In that space of isolation, in that time of isolation where there is no one who's really speaking life into us, we keep on repeating these negative things, these negative meanings that we continue to attach to the experience, such that for many people, they end up deriving their identities from their traumatic experiences because of the meanings that they attach to those experiences. It doesn't have to be lonely, and it should not be lonely. The whole book, The Jumpstart Effect, it is a book about why human connections matter. And I speak about this experience of stuckness as an unfriendly reminder that human connections matter. So it is about the importance of relationships, especially in those times of stuckness, to help us get unstuck. In the book, I share some of the stories of how I got unstuck, how I was able to deal with that experience of anger because of the mentors that I had as a social work student at the time. So, this journey of healing does not have to be a lonely journey. If you need to talk to someone, if you need to go for pastoral counseling, if you need to go for therapy, because the journey of healing does not have to be a lonely one. You don't have to do this alone. And you would be amazed of how people are more than willing to support you through it. So, as you deal with it, don't deal with it alone. I want to conclude with the lesson from Trevor Noah's book, Born a Crime. It says, learn from the past and be better because of your past. Let the pain sharpen you, but don't hold on to it. Don't be bitter. This is a lesson that Trevor says he learned from his mother, that whatever pain from the past he had experienced, he should not hold on to it. He should become better because of it and not bitter. And I hope that this episode will become a reminder to you that those who hold on to their pain become bitter instead of better. So choose to be better and not bitter. I hope it inspired you. I hope it encouraged you to deal with whatever it is that you need to deal with. And if you enjoyed this episode, please do subscribe and leave a comment below. Until next time, give your dreams a chance.